Yeah, and that was a really embarrassing driving test because I had to you had to do something called a hill start. A hill
嗯哼，
start. It means you stop on a hill
嗯，
and then you have to start the car and then you have to go up the hill. And you're driving a manual car, not an automatic car, right?
哦，你开的是手动挡的车，
Yeah. Like
我的天，
you have the choice, like you can use
嗯，
both, but they sometimes take people to it's basically the steepest hill in the city. And
不会吧？
it's the most ridiculous thing. It's like anybody learning to drive a car would not park their car on a road like that,
对
you
啊，
know?
我看过新西兰的那个坡，跟中国的坡特别不一样。新西兰的坡是真的很高，真的很陡。我看过 Dunedin 那个最陡的坡，就是没有车会停在上面，停在上面一定会滑下来。
Mm. So
嗯哼，
Cherry knows like New Zealand has this. We actually New Zealand has the steepest street in the world. Steepest street in the
对，
world. So this is, I mean, here where I am, this is not the steepest street in the world, but it's like super steep. And the car that I was driving was not a good car. It was a terrible car. And I think I'm a pretty good driver. Like I'm good with a manual. What do they call it in America? They call it a stick shift. It was so awkward because
嗯哼，
I did a burnout first on the hill, like it was like and then
呃，
and then we're going up the hill like this the whole way,
那
like
有点尴尬。
I tried to go into second gear and then we started to slow down and I had to put it back into first gear and we're still just going like jolting back and forth like at the top of the hill. I just think like
是吧？
why would you take people here? Like why would you make them do this? But anyway, so Cherry's thinking about buying a car. Um,
嗯，
and
对，
and that's that's kind of not I wanted to talk about transportation, but we
嗯
can talk about a whole variety of things. Like I've been listening to a lot of things, the news about driving in New Zealand recently. There's so many things happening. I don't know how many things we can cover and talk about, but there's a lot going on. But anyway, so this is me and Cherry, and Cherry's just trying to buy a car at the moment. So I want to hear like how it's going, like trying to buy a car in New Zealand because she's in New Zealand, I'm in New Zealand. If you didn't know, but we're in different cities. She's in a bigger city. How's it going buying a car, Cherry? Like, how's things going? Have
嗯。
you found something you like?
其实我已经在那个 Facebook Marketplace 还有 Trade Me 看了2个星期了吧。我觉得对我来说，对我一个新手来说，新手的意思就是我刚刚开始学习开车，或者是刚刚开始学习买车，对我一个新手来说非常的乱，这些信息太多了。然后你要看这些车，它的以前有没有出过事，有没有撞过车，还要看什么 WOF，我一直不懂这些是什么东西，所以我觉得在新西兰买车可能会比较麻烦，但是可能懂车的人会很容易买到好车，像我这种新手就不一定能买到好车。而且我已经听过，我有2个朋友，他们都是新手，然后他们也买了一个二手车，而且这个二手车他们买的很贵，然后问题也很多，但是他们在买的时候不知道，所以我觉得可能新西兰的二手车的市场更适合懂车的人，如果不懂车的人，我可能要找一个人帮我买才可以。
Right. So she's been using a website, Cherry, for the last 2 weeks, looking at secondhand cars, right?
嗯哼，对呀，
And she's saying it's difficult basically for someone that doesn't know a lot about cars, right?
对。
But she has some friends, two friends maybe that can help her.
嗯，他们也是新手。我说他们才买了一辆车，他们刚刚买了一辆车，然后也是发现他们的车有很多问题。他买的很贵，然后问题也很多。
Okay, what's that word then? You use you say you're two.
新手就是你刚刚 a beginner，刚刚开始学习开车的人，或者刚刚开始学习买车的人，我们都是新手。
Sounds like maybe amateur or beginner or something. So her friend's also not experienced with buying cars. And why do you want to buy a car? Is the public transportation not good enough for you?
Yes，我在中国的时候，我从来没有想过买车，因为在中国可能坐地铁更快一点，然后呃堵车特别多。但是在新西兰不一样，我在新西兰特别想买车，就是因为在新西兰公交没有那么方便，然后 Uber 又很贵，然后还有第三个原因是新西兰的地方都比较分散。不像中国，如果在中国，我在一个 shopping mall 我可以买到所有的东西，但是在新西兰，比如我想去买亚洲的东西，我要去很远的地方买，不可以在我家旁边买。所以说三个原因：第一是公交车不方便，第二个是 Uber 很贵，出租车很贵，第三个就是新西兰的商店它在不一样的地方，如果你想要买到不一样的东西，你要去很多地方。
So there's three reasons Cherry's saying that she's going to buy a car. And there's one word in there that I don't know, one new Chinese word that I don't know. But she said the first reason is the buses, right?
嗯哼，
The 公交车 is
对
just not good enough here in New Zealand. There's not enough of them. They don't go to enough places.
对，
Um, and I used to take the bus a lot, so I can kind of understand you have to wait sometimes. In China, you don't
oh,
have to wait, or you do, but it's not long. So China also has subways. We don't have subways. I'll repeat that. We do not have a subway in New Zealand, if people are wondering. Uh, and the second thing was Uber. You can take an Uber, but it's very expensive, Cherry is saying. And that's true. And the regular taxis are also very expensive. They're more expensive. And the third reason was that this is the Chinese word that I'm not sure about. She's saying that New Zealand is the geography style, the design of cities, and the
嗯哼，
and the design of like the city center, and the residential areas or suburbia or whatever are spread out. Everything is very spread out, and so
嗯哼，
it's not very good at even if you have a bike, or even if you want to walk, it's very hard to get anywhere. You have to go quite far. So now there was a word you used to describe the cities. You're saying the cities are very what?
分散，他们
Yeah,
分散在不同的地方。
分散，
对，分散，分开的分，散也是分开的意思。分散
分散。
就是他们
Okay.
没有在一起。
So it's like okay, so it's 分开的, like the city center is separate from the residential areas. Yeah,
对
yeah.
对，
So I think like New Zealand only has a few big cities, like Auckland, Wellington is the Wellington is the capital city, Christchurch, Jiluchang, and
嗯，
Hamilton. Hamilton 我不知道怎么说
汉密尔顿、
and Dunedin. These are
丹尼
probably
丁，
these are probably the biggest cities in New Zealand that you have to care about, or that we have time to talk about. But
嗯
Wellington, I've heard the design of Wellington is good for people like young workers or people that don't want to commute, people that don't want to travel much, because the city is apparently is kind of better designed. It's more clustered together, right?
嗯哼
Auckland is very spread out.
对
It's crazy. Yeah. Like, for example,
crazy。
my sister lives like an hour outside of the city. You have to drive a lot. It's crazy. Um, Now, there is a question here. So, Wellington, the capital city, Huelingdun in New Zealand, has recently been talking about banning cars in the city centre. Now, they didn't achieve this goal in New Zealand, but it was an interesting kind of talking point, I thought, and I wanted to ask Cherry what she thinks about if she would support something like this, having no cars in
嗯。
the city center.
我觉得这个要看情况吧。如果惠灵顿它那个城市的设计真的特别好，真的不需要大家等很长的公交车，不需要大家走很长的时间的话，那它完全可以就是不让别人开车到 city center 到市中心来。但是如果它的那个城市设计还是设计的不够好，大家还是需要开车的话，那如果它禁止 他不让别人开车进来，我觉得会有很多人觉得不方便。比如说，有的人他有很着急的事情，然后他出不去的时候，他会很麻烦。所以我觉得这要看惠灵顿他怎么设计他的城市。我还没有去看，我要去看一看。
Yep. So Cherry's saying it depends on the design of the city, right? If the city's designed, like I'll also throw in here what if that city also has like really good public transportation systems?
嗯，
Yeah, would that also
啊，
be you kind of need that, right? So if the public transportation systems were good, and Cherry's saying if the city is designed well so that things are more sort of together, so like residential living mixed with city shopping malls, right, etc. If you had something like that, then it's kind of like I want to say Shanghai is like that, but I feel like it's not
No，上
really
海，
like that. Mm,
上海设计的很好，但是上海是它的地铁设计的很好。城市还我说不好，但是我觉得它的地铁设计的比较好。
yeah. What about like Dalian? Because we were both in Dalian City, and like I lived in a few different places in Dalian. That felt much better.
嗯
Like that was a like a good mix of city stuff and apartment buildings, apartment blocks and like apartment compounds, like places people. There was a good balance, but Shanghai is just like kind of a bit of it. It does have like good areas, like there's different parts of the city. Actually, I think Shanghai is actually okay because you can have a scooter, right? Lots of people have
对，
scooters, and you can go pretty
嗯
much
哼，
to, well, I won't say most places, but you can go quite far in the
嗯哼，
city. It's very quite tight. It's quite a
嗯哼，
tight
不，
city.
啥意思啊？
tight 就是发音 tight. It's tight. Just being stupid. It doesn't matter.
上海设计的很好，但是没有办法，因为上海的人口太多了，它设计的最好也没有办法服务那么多人，所以我觉得上海设计的已经很好了，但是没有办法，人太多，所以还是会有问题。
And Cherry was saying like you there's going to be a lot of people that complain. A lot of people don't want to do this. Private cars.
嗯
I was listening to something this morning. It said like New Zealand. Actually, I'll read it. It was a quote when I was listening to things. It says New Zealand has one of the highest rates of car use in the world.
嗯，对
So yeah, basically, it's pretty hard to like almost everyone has a car, right? And so
对，
it's
有的
like
人有2辆车，有的人有3辆车。
and what I was listening to, they were talking about the changing culture of driving. Like if you go back 30 years, they were saying, New Zealand people use the car for different reasons. They'd only use it maybe in the weekend, for
嗯
example, to go travel with their family, go visit a beach, go visit some friends, or go to a park or something like that. The car was more special. It wasn't used every day, and people still used public transportation, or they just walked places or
嗯
biked. Now, New Zealand is obviously it's not like some European countries are really good for biking, right? A lot of people have bikes in New Zealand, but the e-bikes have become incredibly popular now,
嗯
and it for a while, I thought it was actually difficult to buy a normal bike because so many bike shops only have e-bikes. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, there are some places are really well set up for riding bikes. But let's not talk about bikes for the second. I do actually want to ask you a more specific thing. Let me just
嗯哼
yeah, give me a second. Okay, so that we this is it. I want to ask Cherry about something that a Chinese person actually told me, because Chinese people come to New Zealand and I think life is difficult for them, transportation wise. It's difficult because most of the big cities and medium cities in China have like really good transportation systems. So you come to New Zealand, like, what do you think? Like, what do Chinese people feel when they come here? Do they feel like it's very difficult to get around? And there's one Chinese person told me, in New Zealand, if you don't have a car, you don't have legs. So maybe you can use that and tell me about a Chinese person's experience in New Zealand with this transportation issue.
我跟你说这句话， 我们家旁边的 Fish and Chips 的中国老板也跟我说过，在新西兰你没有车就是没有腿。然后我一开始还觉得我不相信，我觉得我可以坐公交车。后来我发现真的是这样，就是在新西兰没有车就是没有腿。因为我发现新西兰的公交车经常消失，就是在地图上你可以看到啊，他们要来了，他们要来了。你以为10分钟他们就来了，结果到了10分钟以后他们消失了，他们在那个 Google Map 上面消失了。就是，所以我觉得新西兰公交车基本上你要等30分钟或者40分钟，有时候我等过1个小时的公交车。然后还有一个问题就是说，新西兰很多很漂亮的地方、很有趣的地方都没有车。比如说，我一直想去 Mountain Cook，但是因为 Mountain Cook 一直都没有车可以去，所以我永远都只能到 Tekapo，但是我就是还有1个小时开车，我就可以到 Mountain Cook，但是我没有办法，所以我觉得这句话是真的，在新西兰没有车就是没有腿，你哪里都去不了，你只能从家里到公司。
Okay, so basically, Cherry is expressing some dissatisfaction for the difficulty of living in New Zealand with no car. And she is basically reiterating what I said, which is that you don't have a car, you don't have legs in New Zealand. It's very true. And I think it's especially true for Chinese people coming here from big cities where they didn't have to think about transportation so much. They have many options in China. It is probably the country with the most advanced public transportation system and options in the whole world. Maybe, probably, I guess. Um, Now we don't have a subway in New Zealand. We also don't have fast trains, bullet trains, right?
对，
Gautier. We don't have a Gautier. We don't have a I've forgotten how to say subway all of a sudden.
地铁，
D tier, thank you. We have taxis, but they're very expensive.
嗯
We have Uber, but it's very it's expensive as well, and it's probably I don't know. Like I used Uber in Christchurch, Jiruchang,
嗯哼，
and it was fine. It seemed okay. It was quite good, and we also have scooters. You can rent scooters, you can rent bikes in some of the big cities, but you really kind of need to have a car, and we have this car addiction in New Zealand, I think. So I was saying in the past, people didn't use their cars so much. Today, people are using their cars just to drive around the corner,
对，就
just to
是
drive. Yeah, you know what I mean? What do you think about that, Cherry?
就是随便就是在旁边买一个东西，你也要开车去，就不会走着去在这里。但是如果你走的话，1-2公里，我觉得也挺远的。
Yeah, so like sometimes I criticize my parents, because of there's this over reliance issue on cars and sometimes, but my parents they take bike rides all the time,
嗯
but they also drive the car all the time. So it's like okay,
嗯哼，
there's a
那
lot of
我
moving around. Yep.
我有一个问题，你在新西兰这么多年，你没有车，你不会觉得很困难吗？
Well, the last like 9, 10 years I've been living in China. So
嗯哼，
if I was living in New Zealand during that time, I'm sure I would have a car. I would definitely have a
嗯
car. But before that, like when I was in university, yeah, not having a car was just a little bit. Just anytime you wanted to go somewhere, you could get there. This was in Christchurch as well. But if you had a car, it would be a lot faster. I'll just say
嗯
that.
哼，
Yeah, but I didn't think it was too bad. I took a bus. I was using buses a lot, and that was okay. But it means if you have a job, you have to get up earlier,
嗯，
and you
对，
get home later. And you maybe you have to deal with thinking about, is the bus coming today? And then the bus is late, and then you start thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be late for
嗯
work. You have to think about those things. Luckily, I lived in places where there was always like there was a bus stop nearby, right? And Christchurch really is not that big, I think.
嗯哼，
So,
嗯哼，
but I could understand from a Chinese perspective that it's tough, like it's
嗯
very different. So I wanted to talk about another issue, Cherry, like something that's more Kiwi, more New Zealand, something happening here, an issue that has kind of gone under the radar. Not everybody has been talking about this or probably heard about this, but there was some discussion about if on the road signs in New Zealand if they should include the Maori language. Right now we have English, obviously, on the road signs,
嗯
but
哼，
there were people saying like, should we include the Maori language on road signs? Like, what do you think about this?
我觉得那些路牌有英语也不错，一定要有英语，但是有毛利语，我没有想过这个，我也没有看过毛利语的路牌在这里。我觉得它会有时候会让我觉得有一点 confused，因为如果我开车的时候，我突然看到一个毛利语的路牌，但是我不懂，我会去想，然后这样的话我会分心，然后我就会不注意开车了。所以有毛利语的路牌是很好的，这样可以帮助大家就是认识毛利的文化，认识毛利的语言。但是真的有必要吗？真的有必要吗？因为真的会有很多人只懂毛利语，不懂英语吗？还有就是说，为什么新西兰想要放毛利语的路牌在路？
Well, now that I think about it, for New Zealand people, I don't think it would be a big deal, because we could still just read the English. And a lot of the cities and a lot of lakes and a lot of places, a lot of like trees, different types of trees, different types of birds. Many things have Māori names already.
Yes.
Street names have a lot of
Mhm.
streets that have Māori names as well, right? So having street signs with Māori on it as well, I don't think it would surprise many people. It wouldn't be too crazy of a thing. But for foreigners, yeah, foreigners might have some difficulty if you are actually driving on the roads and the signs were in Māori. It might create some confusion, maybe. I
Mhm.
want to ask Cherry just another question about because she's going to buy a car. At least I think she's going to buy a car. Hopefully, after this conversation, she's still going to buy a car. What is something that concerns you about driving in New Zealand? Like, are you worried about anything in particular? Because, you drive on the other side of the road in China. So you drive on the right side of the road. Here we drive on the left side of the road, right? So is that going to be an issue for you? Are there going to be other issues that you're thinking about?
我觉得一开始我刚刚来的时候是有一些问题，就是我分不清楚左边的车还是右边的车，我过马路的时候会有点危险，我不知道看这边还是看这边，所以我要两边都看。但是我现在后来我发现我慢慢的习惯了，就是左边的车，而且还有一个原因是我在中国我也不开车，所以其实那个开车的习惯对我来说没有那么重要。所以我的朋友带我开了2次车以后，我已经会就是开在左边的路上了。我觉得不是很大的问题，对于新手来说，这个问题不太大。
Okay, so maybe because Cherry said she's never been driving in China, so this should be okay. It's like blank slate, right? Blank piece of paper,
嗯哼，
starting to drive in New Zealand. So the problem would really be maybe when you go back to China and you try to drive there after driving here, right?
嗯，yes，
That might be the problem. Like, are you worried about um, crashing into other people? Because don't want to jinx anything. Uh, in China, I see people having big arguments about like
嗯
really small car accidents and like full on arguments, like screaming at each other, ma
，yes，
and hua, swearing, like, I'm not going to say the bad words, but like saying a lot of bad that right big arguments on the street, everybody's watching in public.
嗯哼，
um in New Zealand, I think it's much more tame, it's much more calm, because everyone has insurance. I'm sure in China people also have car insurance, I don't
嗯
know.
哼，有，
But here nobody seems to care too much, and we just exchange information and then we
嗯哼，
go about our business.
嗯哼，
But I do remember in China when there is a small car accident in China, if you're in the middle of the road, you're supposed to stay in the middle of the road
嗯
and you don't move until the people come and take a photo
嗯
of your
哼，
car. And I thought this
嗯
was the craziest thing because sometimes there would be huge traffic jams
，yes，
because people would just be in their car in the middle of the road because they have a little scratch from another car and they're just blocking the whole road, and but nobody cares. Nobody
嗯
says
哼。
anything. Everybody just drives around or waits, and I thought this is I don't get it. I don't understand it. Like here in New Zealand, if you have a problem, you have to pull over to the side of the road. and then
Mhm.
you deal with it. You find a way to deal with it, but you do not stop in the middle of the road. Like, people would murder you. I want to show you a picture of a road sign. Are you ready?
嗯哼，我的天，这是不让停车的意思吗？
No. This is a
这是一个考试吗？
this is a test. Here, I'll show you again. This sign. Do you know what this means, Cherry?
啊，怎么办？我不知道，不让转弯，不让停车，还是让你停车的意思？
This is the most like ridiculous road sign I've ever seen in New Zealand. It's ridiculous. And I only learned about this maybe a
嗯
few weeks ago. For some people, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this. Some people haven't seen this. This is a sign on the open roads in some of the countryside areas. It means you can basically drive as fast as you no okay you drive up to 100 kilometers. I think it's like sort of the maximum 100 k's. It's like open road, I think, is what it means.
哼
So
，OK，
yeah, I think if you want to go 80, you can go 80. If you want to go 100 kilometers an hour, you go 100. But it doesn't tell you anything,
对
and
啊，
I thought this is such a weird there's no language, no numbers. Generally in the countryside you can drive like 100 kilometers an hour, right? That's like the max.
真的吗？
Yeah, unless you're a
嗯
truck or a bus, maybe you could go slower. But we also have issues about like speed limits
嗯
on
哼
on in the roads in New Zealand. So the issues are like 100 kilometers in the countryside. Some people say that's too fast.
嗯
Maybe bikers and tourists. We have a lot of tourists on the roads in New Zealand, and they think 100 k's is just dangerous for them because they want to enjoy the ride, they want to
Yeah，
enjoy the scenery. New Zealand is supposed to be like a postcard, beautiful
嗯
place for
哼，
people to come. But people are driving at 100 kilometers an hour and can be quite aggressive as well. And the roads are quite thin. So
对
for
啊，
tourists, you have this issue. Also in residential areas, driving at 50 kilometers an hour is also an issue. People say it's too fast, because some houses are very close to the roads in residential areas. And we have a lot of cars. We have a lot of boy racers,
嗯
which are
哼，
people that like to drive really fast, and they're like Japanese imported, souped up little cars, and have loud, big exhaust systems and turbos and Subarus and Mitsubishi Evolutions and stuff. And I feel like New Zealand people they're gonna understand that. Maybe foreign people won't, but there are people that will complain though about the 100 kilometers in the countryside. Like, I know people that have to travel for work.
对啊，
Those people obviously, they lose out because that's time.
嗯哼，
And so commuting, travel for work, people, because we don't have the good high speed trains. Planes are just a little bit expensive. Most people, if you
嗯。
if you work in different cities, you often drive. You don't often fly. So those people, yeah, are going to be upset. But for tourists and stuff, I think it should be slower. Yeah.
我想再说一个，就是说，我们刚刚聊到的那个问题，说在新西兰没有车就是没有腿，但我觉得这是要看我们的性格。就是像我是比较喜欢出去玩儿的人，所以我需要车。但是我也遇到很多人，我上个星期在奥克兰遇到一个女孩儿，她是韩国人，她在新西兰住了14年，她在奥克兰住了14年。他说他不需要车，因为他就住在市中心，然后他也不喜欢出去玩，那没问题，对他来说很方便。所以在现在没有车，有的人可能他会觉得很方便，有的人觉得不方便。我觉得要看每个人的性格。
Cherry saying you have to look at everyone's personality, 性格,
嗯
right?
哼，
So different personality. And she said an example of a Korean living in the city center of Auckland, and how this female, I think it was female, she doesn't
住了
need a car, right? Because she lives in the city center. So different personalities and also different circumstances, right?
对
Different
呀，
situations. Yeah, and she mentioned this quote from the beginning: "If you don't have a car in New Zealand, you don't have legs."
嗯哼，
And I really think it's quite true. And
嗯哼，
but there are a lot of people that come here and they just bike across the whole country. That's a
嗯哼，
popular thing to do. But
嗯
there's
哼，
still not as many as people who rent caravans and tour around New Zealand. So the caravan renting. Caravan, if you don't know, it's like that big car. It's like a house. It's like a moving house,
嗯，
a house
对
on
对对，
wheels. 就叫 caravan.
啊，
Do you ever
房车，
房车? Oh, okay.
房车，
So you say house car, 房车.
对，
We say caravan, and there's some other words, but I can't think of what they are at the moment. Um, yeah. Anyway, I think this is cool. So if you get a car, Cherry, I hope you come and maybe visit the city that I'm in, and I hope you don't have any accidents.
谢谢。
And because honestly, I think like I have a friend in China. He just got his driver's license in China. That's very rare. A foreign guy, a very rare
嗯
thing to see. Huge achievement, I think. It's probably not that hard to do, but I'm just like I would be worried about having a car accident and then having to talk about that with the other driver, or
嗯
like having an argument with another driver. Like if he hit me and then he tries to tell me that actually I hit him, then we're going to get into an argument. And I feel like arguments in a second language or third language is like really good practice.
是的，
Complaining and arguing is a great practice. But like in a real situation when, someone hits your car and you're on
嗯
the road, you're like standing in the middle of the road in China because you can't pull over to the side. That would be a real test of everything,
对
a
啊，
test of everything.
好，我觉得可能打电话给警察比较是对的方法吧。在这里，如果撞车了，我应该打电话给警察吗？
If this Cherry's asking me, should she call the police if she gets into an accident? And I don't know. You could try to deal with it first, and unless that person. I have no experience with this stuff, Cherry. I don't know.
OK，
I have no idea. Maybe drive around with big, strong people in your car,
嗯
so in case
嗯
that happens, and then you can, or someone good at talking. Maybe not me. I'm not. I couldn't deal with that. I don't know how. No, I
嗯，
think people in New Zealand are generally nice. If you have a small accident, people are nice here. You can just talk to them, pull
对
over,
啊，
talk to them. Politeness, kindness, patience. Or you could
I will，
learn Gong Fu if you want to learn
不
some
用
MMA.
不用，在新西兰不用，挺好
Okay.
的。嗯哼，
Yeah. So good luck with your car, and yes,
嗯哼，好，我会让你知道。
maybe next time we can do like a part two after you've got your car, you have some driving experience. We can chat about that.
Yeah, we will. I will complain. 我会抱怨很多。
Love it. Yes. That's what it's all about. Language is all about complaining. That's what some people, that's a famous linguist said that. I can't remember who it is, but language was made to complain. So, yep, we can finish
嗯
here.
哼，
So, thank you for chatting, Cherry.
然后不客气。